In a small town next to a large forest, a girl named Lily had a habit of walking her dog every evening. The dog was a golden retriever named Buddy, whom Lily loved very much. They always took the same path around the lake near the forest and always returned before sunset. This evening, Lily said goodbye to her mother and left with Buddy. Her mother was busy preparing dinner and didn't pay much attention. But this evening was different. After the sun had set, Lily still hadn't returned home. Her mother began to worry, as she was never this late. She started calling out Lily's name from the front of the house, but there was no reply. She walked out to the path, and that's when she saw Buddy. The dog was running back to the house, shaking and tugging on the leash, but Lily was not with him. Buddy stopped in front of Lily's mother and whimpered, as if trying to say something. On the end of the leash that Buddy was tugging was Lily's pink scarf. Her mother grabbed the scarf to look at it, and saw that a part of it was stained with dirt, as if something had dragged it. Buddy's barks grew louder. He ran back and forth, then turned to look at Lily's mother, as if to urge her to follow him. Lily's disappearance caused great surprise among everyone in the town. Some said she might have gotten lost, while others said something bad might have happened to her. But no one knew the truth except the mother's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of fear and a desperate, frantic hope. She looked down at Buddy, whose eyes were fixed on her, then on the path into the forest. The dog gave another urgent whine, a clear plea for her to follow. Taking a deep breath, she clutched the muddy scarf and followed the dog into the dark, whispering woods. The forest, usually so familiar and calm, now felt alien and menacing. The trees grew thick, their branches casting long, twisting shadows that danced in the dim twilight. Buddy led the way with a singular focus. His tail held low, sniffing the ground intently. They left the well-worn path and plunged into the denser undergrowth, the mother's boots crunching on fallen leaves and snapping twigs. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a small, quiet clearing. The air here was still, thick with the scent of damp earth. Buddy stopped abruptly, his body tense, and began to sniff at the base of a large oak tree. The mother's gaze followed his, and her blood ran cold. The leaves on the ground were disturbed, as if someone had struggled or been dragged. Near the tree, a small patch of mud held a clear footprint, a man's boot print, much larger than Lily's foot. Her hands trembling, she looked closer, and her eyes fell upon something small and metallic lying half buried in the dirt. It was a key, but not a house key. It looked like a key to a padlock, old and tarnished. As she reached down to pick it up, a faint sound reached her ears, carried on a sudden gust of wind. It wasn't the rustle of leaves or the hoot of an owl. It was a soft, rhythmic clinking, like metal against metal, coming from somewhere deeper inside the forest. The clinking sound, faint at first, sent a shiver down her spine. It was a methodical, metallic sound that did not belong to the natural rhythm of the woods. It sounded like a chain. Fear threatened to overwhelm her, but the thought of Lily spurred her forward. She looked down at Buddy, who had his ears perked and was staring intently in the direction of the sound. The dog's certainty was all the courage she needed. Clutching the small key and Lily's scarf in one hand, she followed Buddy. The dog moved with a renewed sense of purpose, no longer sniffing the ground, but heading straight towards the source of the noise. The forest grew darker still, the trees closing in around them like a cage. The rhythmic clinking grew louder, a chilling counterpoint to the silence of the deep woods. They came to a small, steep embankment, where Buddy stopped and began to paw at a thick clump of thorny bushes. The mother pushed the branches aside, her hands getting scratched, and gasped at what she saw. Hidden by the foliage was a heavy, old wooden door set into the side of the hill. A thick, rusted chain was wrapped around the door's handles, secured by a large, equally rusted padlock. The key she held in her hand felt impossibly heavy. She looked from the tarnished metal in her palm to the padlock and felt a cold certainty wash over her. It was a perfect match. Her fingers fumbled as she tried to insert the key, her heart hammering against her ribs. The lock clicked open with a loud, final sound that seemed to echo in the silent forest. She pulled the chain away, the metal links clanking loudly as they fell to the ground. As she reached for the door handle, a faint, muffled whisper reached her from the darkness beyond. A small, familiar voice, barely audible, calling out a single word. "Mom?" The mother shoved the heavy wooden door, the hinges groaning in protest as it swung inward, revealing a pitch-black cavity. The smell of damp earth and stale air rushed out. Buddy, growling low in his throat, squeezed past her and disappeared into the darkness. "Lily!" she cried, her voice echoing in the confined space. A small, flickering light near the back of the room illuminated a dirty mattress on the floor. Huddled on it, her knees pulled up to her chest, was Lily. A wave of immense relief washed over the mother. So powerful it almost buckled her knees. She rushed forward, falling to her knees beside her daughter, pulling her into a tight hug. "Mom, you came!" Lily whispered, her voice hoarse but filled with relief. The mother's eyes adjusted to the dim light from a small, battery-powered lantern on the floor. It was a makeshift hideout, clearly not a long-term prison. A hunter's vest and a pair of old binoculars were neatly folded in a corner, a fact that both confused and chilled her. But then she looked at Lily, and the fear returned. Her daughter was safe, but she was not alone. Under Lily's arm, burrowed beneath a small woolen blanket, was something small and whimpering. A tiny, wounded deer fawn, its leg crudely splinted with 2 sticks and some tape. Lily's face wasn't filled with the terror of a captive, but the fierce protectiveness of a guardian. The flicker of a red light caught her mother's attention. The thermal drone from the thumbnail image, lying on its side, its battery dead. Lily pulled her mother closer, her eyes wide with a different kind of fear. She gestured towards the cellar door they had just opened, her voice barely a whisper. "Mom, we have to be quiet. He's coming back for it. We have to hide." Lily's whisper, filled with a raw, desperate fear, snapped the mother back to reality. Her mind raced, trying to process the revelation. "Hide? Who is he?" "The hunter!" Lily breathed, her eyes darting towards the door. "He found the fawn and brought it here. He left me alone, but he said he'd be back. He's trying to sell it." She looked at the abandoned thermal drone. "He uses that to find things at night. I think he saw me coming after him with Buddy." Just as the mother was about to ask more, a low, guttural growl rumbled from Buddy's chest. The dog was staring intently at the small sliver of light from the open door. His hackles raised. The sound of snapping twigs and crunching leaves grew louder, closer. The mother's breath hitched in her throat. He was coming back. "Quick," she hissed, grabbing Lily's hand and pulling her towards the darkest corner of the cellar. She snatched up the woolen blanket and the now silent fawn. The door was heavy, but with a surge of adrenaline, she managed to pull it mostly shut, the hinges squealing in protest. It didn't close completely, leaving a small crack that let in a thin line of light. Footsteps stopped just outside. A deep voice, a man's voice, spoke. "Well now, what's this?" "Looks like someone's been here." A beam of a flashlight sliced through the crack, sweeping across the dark, musty space, barely missing them. The mother and Lily held their breath, their hearts pounding in a frantic rhythm that seemed to shake the very ground. Buddy, pressed against the wall, was completely silent, his large body trembling slightly. They were a single, terrified unit. Then the flashlight beam disappeared. The mother heard the sound of the padlock being put back on. A heavy clank, and then silence. He was gone. But he was not. A low chuckle came from the other side of the door. "Oh, no, you don't. You can't leave yet." The mother's blood ran cold. The man was toying with them. He had them trapped, the sound of the chain being rewrapped around the door's handles filled the air, deliberate and slow, and then a final click of the padlock locking them inside once again. The mother's desperate hammering on the heavy door was met only by a mocking, low chuckle from the other side. "I wouldn't do that," the man's voice called out, casual and conversational. "You'll hurt your hands. I'm just leaving for a bit. Gotta find a buyer for this little guy." His words, coupled with the finality of the locked chain, sent a wave of icy despair through the mother. She slumped against the cold, damp wall, pulling Lily and the fawn closer. The lantern flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock their predicament. The small cellar felt like a tomb. "Mom, what are we going to do?" Lily whispered, her small body trembling. Buddy whined softly, pressing his head against Lily's lap, his eyes fixed on the door. The mother's mind, a whirlwind of panic moments before, was now a cold, clear focus. Screaming was useless. The man knew they were there and didn't care. They had to get out, but how? She looked at the door, then at the small gap where the hinges didn't quite meet. Her gaze fell on Buddy. He was their only hope. She leaned in, whispering a plan to Lily. "Buddy's going to go get help. He knows the way home." Lily's eyes widened with a mix of fear and hope. "He'll be okay, Mom?" "He has to be," her mother replied, her voice firm. They worked together, their fingers raw from scraping at the dirt and loose wood around the doorframe. Slowly, painstakingly, they widened the small gap. The air grew stale and heavy, and the fawn whimpered more frequently. They had to act fast. Finally, the opening was just big enough. The mother gave Buddy a firm command. "Go, boy, home, find help." Buddy nudged her hand, then Lily's, before turning to the gap. With a final determined glance back, he squeezed his large body through the narrow space. The mother held her breath, listening. There was a faint rustle of leaves, a soft thump, and then silence. The mother looked at Lily, a tear rolling down her cheek. He's gone. He'll get help. A new sound, faint at first, reached their ears. It wasn't the sound of the hunter's vehicle leaving. It was the rhythmic scrape of a shovel digging into the earth, just outside the cellar door. The man wasn't leaving. He was making sure they couldn't escape. The rhythmic scrape of the shovel against the earth was a new, more terrifying kind of prison. It was methodical and deliberate. Each shovelful of dirt, a promise that their escape was being sealed off forever. The mother held Lily close, their bodies a single, shivering unit in the stale, musty air. "He's making it worse," Lily whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Buddy can't get back in." "He doesn't need to get back in," her mother said, her voice strained but firm. "He's going to get help." Her eyes darted around the small space, searching for anything they could use. Her gaze fell on a rusty, half-buried metal bar in a corner. With a grunt, she managed to pull it free. It was heavy and caked in dirt, but it was something. Miles away, through the dark, unforgiving forest, Buddy ran. He was a creature of instinct and loyalty, a golden streak of determination under the canopy of trees. His paws pounded the soft earth, his nose low to the ground as he followed the familiar scent of home. He dodged around trees, jumped over fallen logs, and pushed through thorny thickets, the only sound in the silent woods being his own heavy breathing. He reached the edge of the forest, the familiar tree line that bordered the main road. The distant glow of the town streetlights beckoned like a beacon of hope. He was so close. Back inside the cellar, the digging stopped. A tense silence descended, broken only by the mother's ragged breathing and Lily's soft sniffles. Then, the hunter's flashlight beam pierced the crack again. "You still in there? Don't worry. I'm just making your home a little more secure. No need to run away." Suddenly, from a distance, a new sound cut through the night. It wasn't the hunter's voice. It was a clear, desperate call. A man's voice shouting through a megaphone. "Lily! Buddy, it's your father. We're here." The mother's heart leaped into her throat. Lily gasped. Buddy, hearing the familiar voice, stopped dead in his tracks at the edge of the woods. He barked once, a sharp, loud bark filled with both relief and urgency. The mother, hearing the faint bark, felt a surge of hope so powerful it almost blinded her. But then, she heard a different sound from outside the cellar. The hunter had heard it too. The sound of the shovel hitting the dirt was replaced by the quick, purposeful thud of his footsteps. The man was no longer digging. He was running. He was in a race against time to silence the dog before help could arrive. The hunter's casual demeanor shattered. The sound of Buddy's bark, a beacon of hope for the people of the town, was a death knell for him. He dropped his shovel, the clang echoing hollowly, and sprinted through the dense woods, his boots pounding a frantic rhythm against the forest floor. He knew the dog was their link to rescue, and he had to sever it. The game was over. It was now a desperate race to survive. Buddy, his powerful legs driving him forward, barked repeatedly, a loud and clear signal that echoed through the trees. He was no longer just a pet running for home. He was a lifeline. He ran towards the sound of his father's voice, towards the bright beam of flashlights cutting through the darkness. Inside the cellar, the mother heard the hunter's running footsteps fade into the distance. The sound was replaced by Buddy's barks, louder now, and then the faint shouts of the search party. A fierce, protective resolve hardened her gaze. She grabbed the rusty metal bar, her knuckles white. She had to fight, not to escape, but to protect her daughter. Suddenly, a blinding light pierced the trees. Buddy burst out onto the path, his tail wagging furiously as he saw the group of men with their flashlights. His father, a man named Tom, was at the front, his face a mixture of terror and relief. Buddy, you found her!" he yelled, tears streaming down his face. But the hunter, seeing the search party, knew he was cornered. In a final desperate act, he changed direction, not towards the path, but back towards the cellar. He was not trying to escape. He was trying to silence the witnesses. Dom, seeing a man in a hunter's vest running toward the woods where his daughter was, put two and two together in a terrifying flash. He grabbed the nearest search party member by the arm. "Get him! He's the one! He has Lily and her mother." Then, without a second's hesitation, Tom turned and plunged into the undergrowth, following the path that Buddy had just taken, leaving the others to chase the hunter. He knew he had a choice to make, and he knew what mattered most. He had to get to his daughter. The frantic shouts of the search party faded behind him as he ran towards the hidden cellar door, his heart a frantic drumbeat in his ears. He was almost there. He had to be. Tom's heart hammered against his ribs as he plunged through the undergrowth, following the path of broken twigs and crushed leaves, left by the fleeing hunter and the dog. The faint sounds of the chase faded behind him, replaced by the silence of the deep woods. His mind was a singular, terrifying focus. His wife, his daughter. He found the discarded shovel, then the scrape marks on the path, and finally the small, almost invisible opening in the side of the hill. His blood ran cold as he saw the chained padlock on the heavy wooden door. It was the confirmation of his worst fears. He heard a faint sob from within, followed by a muffled cry of, "Tom!" It was his wife. "I'm here! I'm here! I'll get you out!" he yelled, his voice thick with emotion. He threw himself against the old door, but it held firm. He tried again, using his shoulder as a battering ram, but the wood wouldn't give. Inside, the mother heard her husband's voice. A new surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. "He's here, Lily! He's here!" she cried. She gripped the metal bar, not as a weapon now, but as a tool. She wedged the end of it into the crack in the door, just as Tom was preparing to ram it one last time. The mother's furious prying from the inside and Tom's full-force shove from the outside were too much for the old, rotting wood. With a deafening crack, the door broke free of its hinges and burst open, revealing the small lantern-lit space. Tom staggered inside, his eyes wild with relief. He saw them immediately. His wife, bruised and tear-stained, and Lily, huddled against the wall with Buddy by her side. Lily looked up, her face streaked with dirt and tears, and she threw herself into his arms. He held her tight, his chest heaving with sobs of pure relief. Behind Lily, he saw the small, whimpering fawn. The whole story, the reason for the thermal drone and the hunter, clicked into place in his mind. He knelt down, embracing his wife and daughter in a single powerful hug. "I've got you. You're safe." "We're all safe now." Moments later, the rest of the search party arrived, out of breath but triumphant. They had the hunter, a sullen, defeated man, in tow. The police were called, and an animal rescue team was dispatched for the fawn. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, the family walked out of the forest together. They were tired and shaken, but they were together. Buddy trotted proudly at their side, his tail wagging. The dark woods held their secrets, but for this family, the long, terrifying night was finally over, and they were walking toward the light.